次はきっといい人たちだよ。
今までもいい人たちだったよ。でもどこに行っても嫌われてしまうんだ。人にもあいつらにも。
If you've been an anime fan for a few years, you've probably come across some mention of Natsume Yuujinchou, even if it's in passing. It's a long-standing monthly shoujo manga, with a fairly steady adaptation that comes out in chunks of 2 every few years or so. It's a beautiful series, one filled with a sense of sensibility almost unparalleled in anime. It's the story of a boy's adventures with yokai and the people he slowly lets into his life after years of distrust, betrayal, fear, and sorrow. In spite of the supernatural and sorrowful elements, Natsume is a very peaceful series, one you can easily chip at an episode or 2 a day for a relaxing sitting. In this world, there are mythical, spiritual creatures called yokai, entities undetectable by most humans, some peaceful, some malevolent. They interact with each other and sometimes even humanity in plain sight, which is a nightmare for the few who can actually see them, as hardly anyone will believe them. This is the upbringing Natsume grew up with, being passed around from household to household, city to city, tolerated at best and rejected if not bullied at worst by the people around him. Takashi Natsume was seen as a weird liar throughout much of his life for noticing, managing, or being frightened by these creatures, tormented by yokai, dismissed by humanity, at least until present day. Only a few family members liked him well enough by the time he was sent somewhere else. Things were so bad that Natsume would even lash out at the few yokai who actually tried to connect with him rather than hurt him. If any Mahotsukai no Yome fans are watching, some of this might sound a little familiar, albeit far less grisly. At the start of the series, Natsume is reserved and distant, with each piece of information about his past doled out sporadically. His life was not unlike that of his grandmother, the enigmatic and legendary Natsume Reiko, who kept a mysterious book of friends. She was an aloof wanderer, encountering yokai and either defeating or befriending them before walking off with their names, and thus, a spiritual connection many in the present day seek to reclaim. Even though she eventually had offspring, meaning she likely found someone to love and live with, all evidence points to her life having been largely miserable.
何かと繋がれるかもしれなかった玲子さん。でも多分気づけなかったのだろう。いろんなものから距離を取りすぎて。いや、ひょっとしたら気づきたくなくて。
In the present, she's a forgotten, distant figure whose connections to her family were threadbare. Her only living connection now is our protagonist, who seemed to walk a similar path, bullied by some, hated by others, and feared by more even still. That is until he moved to where he is now, where 3 main changes occurred in his life. Firstly, he was taken in by Toko and Shigure Fujiwara, a middle-aged couple tangentially related to the family tree. Toko was a distant relative of Natsume's dad, and Shigure was among the only people in the grandmother's relatively short life, albeit not for very long. Out in the countryside, these two provide Natsume the warm, welcoming home he desperately needed after so long. As such, Natsume tries especially hard to keep his endeavors with yokai a secret in order to avoid worrying them, even when the idea of them rejecting him like virtually everyone else is off the table. We occasionally learn more about this lovely couple that makes them engaging even outside of just what they mean to Natsume, reinforcing how wonderful it is that they finally found him and took him in, how they made him the son they never had or never could have, and how they became the first people to truly feel like the parents Natsume lost so long ago. With his move to the countryside came new opportunities for friends as well. At first we have those 2 guys, as it were, Atsushi Kitamoto and Satoru Nishimura, the chill one and the rowdy bumbler. They and class president Jun Sasada make up the bare-bones start of Natsume's friend group, even if initially they're more at arm's length with him. They're also the most normal, yokai-free friends, so they're not usually the ones who get involved with that stuff in any capacity, though we do get some chapters and episodes either spotlighting them or having a yokai be involved with them somehow. That being said, Sasada does believe in spirits, and for a brief stint, suspects Natsume may be involved with them somehow. Then there's Kaname Tanuma, the son of a priest. Introduced only a little later into the first season, he's the first person who has any even tenuous yokai connections, thanks to his father and the pool that sometimes shows some weird visages. As such, he's the first person Natsume is comfortable telling about his yokai endeavors. and the first person who consistently gets wrapped in these plots with his own chill vibes and occasional insecurities. Tangentially related to the friend group is actor and exorcist Shuichi Natori, who along with a few yokai familiars, aids Natsume on occasion. He's also related for a more background plot related reason we won't get into here, as while there are some occasional plot elements in the show, they really just come in and out of focus, and Natsume is not a plot heavy show. The last human member of the friend group arrives in season 2, that being Torutaki. Amusingly, Nishimura, the dorky ladies lover that he is, ends up finding out about her first thanks to a rumor about her beauty. Outside of some yokai shenanigans in her introduction, she's generally a more chill, happy-go-lucky gal. She also has a method of being able to temporarily see yokai, and as such, frequently goes on yokai adventures with Natsume and Tanama, as well as a certain cat she can't get enough of. The actual premise of the show revolves around said cat and the titular Book of Friends. During an encounter with a violent yokai, Natsume accidentally unleashes a seal housing the legendary yokai Madara, who is forced to take on the appearance of a lucky cat by default. With the begrudging agreement the two strike up, Natsume houses him in the Fujiwara household, and Madara acts as Natsume's guard as they go on yokai adventures and return the names of the entities Reiko wrote of. The latter is much to Madara's chagrin, but through this, Natsume is able to survive more perilous encounters and make those friendships established earlier. Hell, he doesn't just soften up to humans, he eventually sheds some of his long-standing resentment and distrust of yokai, even reflecting on times he wishes he treated some of them better. The first half of season 1 is particularly dedicated to this, as while the two will regularly refuse side quests from yokai who meet them, Natsume in particular will always come around. Plus, every time he enacts the ritual to return their names, he sees a memory of them, usually involving how Reiko ran into them and got their names in the first place. As such, he gets to learn more about them, their personalities, their lives, their goals and troubles. Most of them depart by the end of the episode, but some of them instead become regulars, friends of Natsume and even Madara to a lesser extent, such as Ushikawa, Hitotsume, and especially Hinoe. This is what Natsume Yuujinchou is. A series of largely episodic escapades where Natsume and the friends and others who come in and slowly enrich his once miserable life go on adventures dealing with other yokai. Whether they be endeavors involving a malevolent spirit, escapades to help a nice and vulnerable yokai, both or neither, Natsume is learning something new about both the human world and the invisible world of yokai. Sometimes forlorn and wistful, other times pleasant and beautifully sweet, and very rarely saccharine to the point of being cloying or overdone, save for being a little too expositive and monologue heavy. By the end of episode 6, Natsume's transformation from a largely distrustful and empty recluse to someone being able to shed tears of joy for another yokai's final accomplishment is just wonderful. By the end of season 2, he has regular groups of friends to hang out with. Later on, he's able to revisit unpleasant parts of his past with a healthier perspective and some help now that time has passed, and both he and the others around him have grown up. With a sense of sensibility, a danger-prone willingness to protect those around him, and a little bit of force and backup, Natsume is able to get the job done and remain a consistently likable, even relatable protagonist. One of the most striking examples is when he finds out about a malevolent yokai trying to take over his home, and how through his adoptive father's story, he's able to protect the household while feeling that much closer to everyone, all the while confronting himself about if he should keep lying to them about his yokai endeavors.
玲子さんは亡くなった。この家も渡すわけにはいかない。この家の人を苦しめるなら出て行ってもらう。
Natsume Yuujinchou is a consistently rewarding and emotionally resonant series, provided you take it on its own terms and accept that it's mainly an episodic series. There is no grand overarching narrative every episode, chapter, or season that the show has to actively build up towards. Hell, plenty of episodes have nothing to do with returning yokai names, and some just use that as a jumping off point for a completely different story. Even when you start expecting more of the same, you know you're expecting a consistently good time. And once you start looking back, you'll see just how far you and Natsume have come. And hey, Natsume Season 7 is coming out in a few months, so you'll have plenty of time to catch up. We've got 6 seasons, a few short movies, and one of the most soothing, moving, and peaceful soundtracks in anime, courtesy of Makoto Yoshimori, which I can't really play, lest the copyright bloodhounds make this video inaccessible. In any case, just kick back, relax, maybe get some tissues ready, and watch the beautiful journey of Natsume and his book of friends. There's just so much else I'd really like to say here, like how consistently great the EDs are, or how the series has some of the best sunsets and most striking heat waves in anime. It's had a largely consistent crew with the same director and many of the same script writers coming back and whatnot. However, if I've done my job, you've already considered giving this anime, or even the manga, a go, and are ready to experience one of the loveliest, most consistent series out there. Hell, I've actually hidden some interesting and important things away so you can experience them firsthand, including some somber elements about yokai and the humans who can see them. Give it an episode or two, or a chapter or two a day when you're tired from school or work or have nothing better to do. Just please make sure to watch episode 2 and maybe make it to episode 6 before you consider stopping. Episode 1 just gets the premise out of the way and may not leave the smoothest first impression. Episode 2 is where the series really starts to show you its hand. In either case, you'll make it there in no time, and I'm sure you won't regret it.